My phone buzzed at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, and I already knew it wasn't good news. It never is when my mother calls that late. I stared at the screen for 2 full rings. Her contact photo, a picture from my cousin's wedding 4 years ago. Her smile, wide and genuine, glowed in the dark of my bedroom. I remember thinking, she looks so happy in that photo. She hadn't looked at me like that in a long time. I answered, "Sweetheart." Her voice had that particular softness she only uses when she wants something. Not the sharp edge she uses when she's disappointed in me, or the flat tone she uses when she's just reporting facts. This was the warm, practiced softness. The one that used to make me feel special when I was 9 years old. "Did I wake you?" "No," I said, even though I'd been asleep for an hour. Your father and I have been talking." She paused. "About Aubrey." Of course, it was always about Aubrey. Let me back up, because to understand what happened at my brother's college graduation last May, you have to understand what our family looked like for the 28 years before it. I'm Sloan. Well, that name is in the file. Let me start over. My name is Ren. No. Okay, I'll call myself by the name I go by with my closest friends, the name my college roommate gave me because she said I reminded her of someone who had their life figured out before everyone else did. People call me Greta. It's short for nothing. It just stuck. I'm 31. I own a small e-commerce business, custom pet portraits, digital downloads, and a Shopify store that I built from nothing at 24 with $800 in savings and a secondhand drawing tablet. Last year, the business cleared $340,000. The year before that, $210,000. My parents know the business exists. They refer to it as my little art thing. My brother Finn is 22. He just finished a degree in civil engineering from a state school in Ohio. He worked 20 hours a week the entire time he was in school, kept a 3.7 GPA, never asked anyone for a single dollar. He drove a 2009 Honda Civic with a cracked dashboard and a passenger window that didn't roll all the way down, and he never once complained about it. Then there's Aubrey. Aubrey is 26. She's the middle child, the pretty one, the one my mother's friends always asked about at Christmas parties. She went to a private university, not because she got in on merit, which she could have, she's genuinely intelligent, but because my father decided his daughter deserved the full experience. 4 years. Room, board, tuition. A car her freshman year because the campus is hard to navigate without one. My parents paid for all of it. They drained most of their savings doing it, took out a Parent Plus loan for the last 2 years, and then Aubrey graduated and announced she wanted to go to law school. My parents said yes. They didn't ask Finn. They didn't ask me. They looked at Aubrey across the dinner table and said, "We'll figure it out." Then they called me. The conversation that night, the 11:47 p.m. call, was not the first time they'd brought this up. It was the fourth. The first time had been casual, a mention over Sunday dinner when I'd driven home to visit in February. My father said something like, "Law school is expensive, you know. Harvard's running about $65,000 a year now." He said it to the table, not to me specifically, but I felt the weight of it land directly on my chest. I didn't say anything that first time. Or the second, when my mother texted me an article about families supporting each other's dreams. Or the third, when my father called me directly and said, "Greta, you've been so lucky with that art business. Aubrey's worked so hard." Lucky. That word sat in my stomach for days after. I had worked 7 days a week for 3 years to build something from nothing. I had missed birthdays, holidays, friendships, sleep. I had cried at my kitchen table over a spreadsheet at 2 a.m. more times than I could count. I had done it without a single dollar from them, without a co-signed loan, without even a "we're proud of you," until the business was already successful enough that they couldn't ignore it anymore. But I was lucky. The fourth call, the 11,047 one, my mother got specific. "We were thinking," she said, "if you could contribute something toward Aubrey's first year, it would take so much pressure off. Even $20,000 would help enormously. You could think of it as a loan to the family." "A loan," I repeated. "We pay you back. Eventually. You know how it is. Once she's practicing, she'll make good money." I sat with the phone pressed to my ear in the dark, and I looked at the ceiling of my bedroom and I thought about Finn. About how he'd texted me 2 weeks earlier to say his car had failed inspection and he needed $400 for repairs, and he was asking if he could borrow it and he'd totally understand if I couldn't. He'd worked 3 extra shifts to pay me back before I'd even had a chance to tell him not to worry about it. I thought about the way my parents had talked about his engineering degree at Thanksgiving. "It's a solid field," my father had said, not proud, just acknowledging. Like Finn had picked something acceptable. Like he'd cleared the bar, not cleared the sky. I told my mother I'd think about it. I already knew what I was going to do. The plan didn't come to me all at once. It came in pieces, the way most things in my life have come to me. Slowly, then all at once, the way water builds behind a dam. The first piece, I called Finn in March. "Hey," I said, "what's your lease situation?" He laughed a little, confused. "Month to month right now? Why? Are you happy in Columbus?" He paused. Yeah, I like it here. My job starts in August. I was just gonna keep renting for a while, figure things out." I asked him to send me the neighborhoods he liked. He sent me a list with little notes next to each one. Close to the river, good coffee shops, quiet but not dead. I read them 3 times. Then I called a buyer's agent I'd worked with before. A woman named Claudette who had helped me buy my own condo 2 years earlier, and who I trusted completely. I told her I was looking for a house in Columbus, something solid, move-in ready, under $280,000. Good bones, safe neighborhood, a yard if possible, because I had a feeling Finn would eventually get a dog. She found it in 6 weeks. 3 bedrooms, a garage, a backyard with a maple tree in the corner. $261,500. I made an offer in cash. The second piece, I documented everything. I know that sounds cold. But here's the thing. When you grow up in a family where the rules change depending on who's asking, you learn to keep records. I had saved every text from my mother about Aubrey's law school. I had a voicemail from my father. I let it go to voicemail on purpose, where he said, and I'm paraphrasing here because I won't quote it directly, that he expected me to step up for the family, that I had money to spare, and that Aubrey's future was more important than my side project. I had the message my mother had sent the previous Christmas when she told our extended family that Aubrey had big things ahead, while describing my business as a cute hobby, Greta does online. I wasn't building a court case. I was just making sure I wasn't the only one who remembered what had been said. The third piece was the hardest. I called my mother back, 3 weeks before Finn's graduation, and I said, "I've been thinking about what you asked. I'm going to do something to help the family. I'll make an announcement at Finn's graduation." My mother was so relieved, her voice actually cracked. "Oh, sweetheart, that's really generous. Aubrey is going to be so grateful." "Tell Dad," I said. "I want everyone to know I'm planning something." Of course, we're so proud of you." There it was. 28 years of waiting, and I got it for the wrong reason. Finn's graduation was on a Saturday in May. The ceremony was held in the university's main arena, 15,000 seats, most of them full. Our parents drove up from Pittsburgh. I flew in from Portland the night before and took Finn to dinner, just the 2 of us, at a barbecue place he'd been wanting to try. We talked for 3 hours. About his job, about his apartment lease, about his plans. He told me he was nervous about the future, that he was trying to be smart about money because he'd seen how quickly things could go sideways. He said he was thinking about saving aggressively, maybe buying a place in 4 or 5 years if he stayed in Columbus. I listened and nodded and didn't say anything. I had the cashier's check and the deed in my bag. I'd had them notarized the week before. Claudette had walked me through everything. At the end of the night, Finn picked up the check before I could. He grinned and said, "I got it. You always get it." I almost told him right there. Instead I said, "Enjoy it while you can. Things are changing for you." He laughed. He thought I meant the new job. The graduation ceremony itself was long. 4 colleges, alphabetical order, hundreds of names. We sat in the bleachers, my parents, my mother's sister Claudia, who'd driven up from Cincinnati, and me. My mother kept leaning over to whisper things about Aubrey, how she'd toured a law school in D.C. the week before, how she was so serious about her future, how she deserved the support from the family. I nodded. I had my bag on my lap. When Finn's name was called and he walked across the stage, my father stood up and clapped. He whistled once, loud enough that a few people around us turned. My mother cried a little. It was genuine, I think. They loved Finn. They just loved Aubrey more, in the way that some parents love one child more and tell themselves it isn't true. After the ceremony, we met Finn on the lawn outside the arena. He was flushed, happy, holding his diploma case with two hands like it might run away. He hugged our parents first, then turned to me, and I grabbed him and held on for a beat longer than usual. "Okay," he said, pulling back, looking at me. "Why do you look like you're about to cry?" "I'm not," I said, which was a lie. I reached into my bag. I handed him a card first, the kind you get at Target, navy blue with gold lettering that says congratulations. Inside I had written 3 sentences. "You worked for everything you have. You never asked for anything you didn't earn. This is from me, with no strings attached." He opened the card and read it. Then he looked up, confused, because there was something else in the envelope, a folded piece of paper. "What is this?" he said. "Open it." He unfolded it. It took him a second to understand what he was reading. I watched his face go from confused to still. His eyes moved back and forth across the page twice. "Greta," he said. His voice was strange, quiet. This is a deed." "To a house," I said. "It's yours. In Columbus, 4 miles from your job. 3 bedrooms, a garage, a backyard. Claudette has the keys. I'll send you her number." He stared at me. "It's paid for," I said. "No mortgage, no debt. It's in your name." My father, who had been standing close enough to hear, went very still. Finn looked at the deed, then at me, then at the deed again. His jaw worked. He pressed his lips together and I could see him trying to hold it together in the middle of a lawn full of people. "I can't," he started. "You can," I said. "You already did. You earned this, Finn. I just made it official." He hugged me again, and this time neither of us pulled back for a long time. My father found his voice approximately 45 seconds after that. "That money," he said. He wasn't quite yelling yet. We were still surrounded by families taking photos, kids running on the grass. He had the sense to keep his voice low, but the tone was unmistakable. I had heard that tone before. When I was 17 and dented the car. When I was 20 and dropped pre-med. When I chose to start a business instead of taking the marketing job his friend had offered me. "That money was supposed to go to your sister." I turned to face him. My mother had both hands pressed over her mouth. "I never agreed to that," I said. "I said I was going to do something for the family at Finn's graduation. I did." "You told your mother." "I told her I was going to make an announcement. I did." I kept my voice calm. Not cold, just steady. "Dad, I'm not a family fund. I'm a person. And Finn is part of this family too. Aubrey is trying to build her future. So is Finn." I looked at him directly. He just did it without asking anyone for anything. My mother reached over and touched my father's arm. He shook her off. His face had gone red in the way it does when he's moved from anger into something more complicated. Something that might be shame if he let it get that far. "You had the money," he said. "You could have helped her." "I could have," I agreed. "I chose not to." He stared at me. My Aunt Claudia, to her credit, had quietly moved 15 feet away and was looking at her phone with great focus. "Do you know what this does to your sister?" my mother said softly. "When she finds out?" "I think," I said, "the more important question is what Aubrey plans to do about her own loans. She's 26, she has a college degree, she can work, she can apply for grants, she can go to a state school." I paused. The same options Finn had. The same options I had. The same options I had. My father opened his mouth. I took a breath. This was the part I had been waiting to say for about 6 years. "Dad, I want to say something and I need you to actually hear it." I kept my voice low even. "I have never asked you for money. Not once since I was 23. I built my business without a single dollar from you or Mom. You've called it a hobby, a side project, a little art thing for the last 7 years. You told me, and I have the voicemail, that Aubrey's future was more important than my side project. That's fine, that's your opinion. But my money is mine, and I get to decide where it goes. The voicemail comment landed. I saw it in his face, the slight flinch, the recalibration. I have the voicemail, I repeated, not unkindly. I'm not trying to start a war. I'm just telling you, clearly, that this conversation is over. Finn was standing a few feet away. He hadn't moved since I'd handed him the deed. He was watching my father with an expression I hadn't seen on him before. Not anger, not vindication, just something careful and quiet, like he was seeing something he'd suspected for a long time and was finally allowed to acknowledge. My mother cried on the walk back to the parking lot. My father didn't speak to me for the rest of the afternoon. Finn drove me to the airport the next morning in a car I was now technically helping him upgrade. We got coffee at a drive-thru. He didn't say much until we pulled up to departures. I don't know how to say thank you for this, he said. Then don't, I said. Just use the garage. I know you'll get a dog eventually. He laughed, the real kind. The aftermath moved faster than I expected. My mother called 3 times in the first 48 hours. I let the first 2 go to voicemail. The third time, I answered. She told me Aubrey was devastated, that she felt like the family had turned against her, that she didn't understand why I would do something so hurtful. I listened to all of it without interrupting. Then I said, Aubrey wasn't at Finn's graduation. I didn't do anything to Aubrey. I did something for Finn. Those aren't the same thing. My mother said, you know what we were counting on. I know, I said. That's the problem. She went quiet. I love you, I told her, and I meant it. But I'm not going to fund Aubrey's law school, and I'm not going to apologize for what I did for Finn. If you want to be angry about that, I understand, but I need you to understand that it is not changing. She said she needed time. I told her to take as much as she needed. Aubrey texted me 4 days later. It was a long message, and parts of it were genuinely painful to read because she wasn't entirely wrong. There had been unfairness in our family for years, and some of it had landed on her too, in ways I hadn't fully accounted for. She had been pressured into expectations I'd been allowed to walk away from. She had her own complicated relationship with my parents' choices. But she also said, at the end of the message, that she hoped I knew I'd set a precedent and that the family wouldn't forget this. I read that last part twice. Then I put my phone down and made myself a cup of coffee and sat at my kitchen table for a long time. The thing about growing up the way we did, in a house where love was unevenly distributed and silence was the safest currency, is that you spend a lot of years waiting to be seen. Waiting for someone to notice that you're working harder than you're being given credit for. Waiting for the acknowledgement that you deserve the same things the favored child gets without asking. I stopped waiting a long time ago. I stopped waiting when I sat down with $800 and a drawing tablet and decided that if no one was going to hand me a foundation, I'd build my own. What I did for Finn was never about taking something from Aubrey. It was about giving something to someone who had been invisible for too long. About making sure that at least once, in the family we both grew up in, someone noticed what he had done and decided it mattered. The house closed without any complications. Finn moved in at the end of June with a U-Haul full of secondhand furniture, a box of kitchen stuff from Walmart, and a 3-year-old rescue mutt he adopted from the county shelter the day after he got the keys. He named the dog something ridiculous. A long, silly name I won't share here because it's the kind of name that only makes sense to the person who picked it. He texted me a photo of the dog in the backyard, sitting under the maple tree squinting into the sun. Below the photo, he wrote, I didn't know families could do stuff like this for each other. I looked at that message for a long time, and I wrote back, they can. We do now. The morning after I handed Finn that deed, I sat in my hotel room in Columbus and ordered room service coffee and didn't turn on my phone for 2 hours. Not because I was afraid of what I'd find on it, I already knew, but because I wanted to sit with what had happened without anyone else's voice in my head yet. I kept thinking about the $800, the drawing tablet with the sticky hinge, the first year when I made $22,000 and thought I was rich, and then realized how much of it disappeared into taxes and supplies and software subscriptions I hadn't accounted for, the year I made nothing in January and February and March, and told myself it was seasonal and tried to believe it. No one in my family asked about any of that. Not once. They asked about Aubrey's internship and Aubrey's GPA and whether Aubrey had heard back from her top choice. I was in the background, figuring it out alone, and I think for a long time I told myself that was fine, that I didn't need the acknowledgement, that I was beyond it. I wasn't beyond it. I just got better at not needing it from them. Here's what I've come to understand about how things unfold in families like mine, and I think a lot of people watching this know exactly what I mean. When one person is consistently asked to carry more than their share, and they do it quietly, without complaint, the people asking eventually stop seeing it as a favor and start seeing it as a fact. My willingness to handle things on my own got reframed, over time, as evidence that I didn't need anything. And my father's willingness to step in for Aubrey got reframed, over time, as evidence that she did. That gap widens every year you let it go unaddressed. I let it go for a long time. What changed wasn't that I got angry. Anger was always there somewhere. What changed was that I got clear. There's a real difference between those two things. Anger without clarity just burns. Clarity without clarity just sits there, not doing much either. What Finn deserved, and what I should have said out loud years earlier, required both. It required me to be honest about what I was watching happen in our family, and then to do something about it that cost me something real. Not money. The money was the easy part. What it cost me was the version of myself that kept hoping my parents would eventually see it on their own. Finn never once asked me to fight for him. That's the kind of person he is. He just put his head down and kept going, kept working, kept being decent in a family where decency wasn't always rewarded. Watching that for years taught me something about what real integrity looks like. Not the loud kind. The quiet kind that shows up anyway even when no one's keeping score. I don't think I was a hero in this story. I had the resources to do what I did, and not everyone does. But I think what matters, what I keep coming back to, is that every choice I made was mine. I earned the ability to make them. I made them deliberately, and I made them in a direction I could actually live with. The dog's name, if you're still wondering, is Professor Barnabas Winkle III. Finn picked it, of course he did.